talking about Jesus speaking to his church in the book of Revelation. We're looking at the book of Revelation, and the one idea I've been trying to get our church to see, and I want to say it again to all of us because I think it always has relevance. What is the point of the book of Revelation? It's one major theme. It's not a timeline, where are we, what's happening in the world. The major theme, the important part of the book of Revelation for all of us is this. I think it's relevant. You ready? God has always been, and will always be on the throne. He will always win in every generation and in every, as Kayla sang about mountains, whatever mountain, God will always win. That is what Revelation is all about. And so we've been looking at it from that perspective. And I have one verse I want to share that it's where we're at normally in our 9 and 11 services. It's Revelation chapter 3. This is Jesus speaking to his church, and he says this, and I'll try to see if I can get to see it. Yep, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and dine with him, and he with me. It's one of the more like famous Bible verses that we hear quoted often, that Jesus is standing and he's knocking and he's saying, if you will open the door, I will come in. And this is a great reminder to us, whether we are Christian or not, that Jesus is saying, if you will open up to me, I will come into your life and he uses the phrase, dine with you. And what that means for you and me is it means that he wants to come in and have actual, meaningful, real relationship with us. I want to clarify something. I have heard this teaching, and we talked about Jesus is saying that I'm knocking on the door of your heart, right? So the Bible uses the analogy of our hearts like a house, right? And sometimes we'll hear it like, hey, our heart is a house and we just need to let Jesus come into the house. And there's rooms in our house that Jesus wants to clean and he wants to help us with, and so on and so forth. And I think it's a great analogy, but I want to suggest something to you. As we talk about this briefly. I want to suggest something to you. I want you to imagine a house, a building. I think it's not a difficult thing to imagine, but it's definitely the things of our nightmares. But I want you to imagine that you come up to a home, a building, or something of that nature, and you see that the whole thing is on fire. I think that's a better analogy. I think it's a good analogy for you and I to consider this, that when Jesus says, I want to come into your life, it's not that he's on the outside saying, you're doing really good, I'd just like to be a part of it. There's something deeper happening. It's as if Jesus is saying, if you don't let me in, there are going to be terrible and severe consequences that are unforeseeable but inevitable in your life. And that is true for both Christian and non-Christian. I think sometimes we forget this, and I want to mention this, but you got to try to see it from God's perspective. That's the perspective I believe we need to see. That he's standing on the outside, and he's knocking, saying, please let me in. Now, of course, could God get into any building, any home, any life, any situation? Could he just burst his way through? Of course he could. But instead, and you have to understand this is one of those kind of frustrating things about God, and you say, can you say that on a Sunday? I can. Here's why. It's kind of a frustrating thing about God. You ready? Here's what it is. It's that God will never usurp your own will. It's one of the things we love the most and hate the most about God. We love it when when we get to choose, but we hate it when we know that we've chosen wrong, and we wish God would just take over sometimes. You know that phrase, Jesus, take the wheel? You know what he says back? Keep your hands on the wheel, por favor. Don't throw your life. That's not how it works. You have because you were made in God's image, he's not going to usurp into your life without you having a part to say, hey, I'm actually choosing to follow the Lord. In fact, I would even go as far as to say this. There are so many people today. Listen, there are so many people today who claim Christianity, but they claim it like as if you're claiming land or something. I claim Christianity as a part of, friends, what the Bible tells us about what it means to be a Christian is not that you can claim to be Christian, but that we are so in a desperate state that we humbly come before God and say, Lord, please receive me. To claim something is to still have a position of like, it's mine to grab onto. It's mine to hold. Jesus is saying, I am on the outside. And I think this is an exceptionally offensive thing for all of us who are Christians to hear. But I think it's something we have to just kind of accept. And if you're not a Christian, then it's true for you too. But if you are a Christian, then if you hear this well, you should be a little offended. Here's the offense. Jesus is saying he's on the outside of your heart. And that he wants to come into your life. And of course, we will say, what are you talking about? I'm a Christian. And yet that tells me something is happening here in the book of Revelation that applies to all of our lives, in every generation, in all times. Jesus is saying something that is so significant. He's saying this: at any given moment, because you are a free will being made in the image of God, totally free, Christian or not, I can be on the outside of your life. You can claim me, you can talk about me, you can have your ticket, you can go to church, but if I am not relevant in the moments of your life, daily moments, weekly moments, monthly moments, I might be on the outside, and I'm asking for you to let me come back on into the inside. What that reminds me is, and then here's the part that's not offensive. You ready? Jesus wants actual, meaningful relationship with you. And I say it, and it sounds so cliche. It sounds like a typical pastor thing to say. You don't know my life. You don't know my struggles. You don't know my situation. And you're correct to all those things. But what I do know is this, according to the Bible, that God is not looking for a simple, like kind of an outward, kind of a generic relationship. I think so much of Christianity is so vague that so many of us can feel comfortable, and yet we never feel like we get solutions or anything actually changes in our lives. I'm Christian, but this, that, and the other. But what does it look like? What is God's intention? Is God's intention that we would simply be claiming a faith, but very practically we just live like everybody else? Or is the goal, and this is what I think is so exciting about what God offers to you and me, or is the goal that God would actually invade into the chaos of our actual lives and bring healing and peace and wholeness into the actual situations of our lives? You see, when Jesus says, I'm at the door and I'm knocking, and if you will open up and let me come in, I will come and dine with you. What he's saying is, he's saying two things. I want to come into the fire. If you let me in, I can. Do you notice the analogy? Jesus doesn't say, open up and get out. He says, open up and let me in. God is not looking to just remove you from the fire. He wants to quench the fires that are in every one of our souls. Not only that, but he wants to nourish us. He wants to make us whole. When's the last time you felt whole in life? When's the last time you felt actual peace from God? Not that you just had a feeling of good, but that you really felt peace from God. And if you couldn't describe it as peace from God, then I'd suggest this. Look deeper. Bring him in deeper. When he says, open up the door and let me in, it's not so that he can go and clean some of the rooms because we're generally doing good. It's because the building's on fire and he wants to quench the agony, the hurt, the pain, the confusion, the isolation, the insulation, the desperation, the hopelessness. He wants to come in and bring a quenching, like the living word and the living water over our souls. He doesn't just want you to open the door so he can, saunter in and say, oh, that room's, this room is kind of dirty, Lord. Don't pay any attention to that room. That's not what's happening. When there's fire, you don't say, oh, forgive the mess. Where there's fire, there's only one thing. I just got to get out of this. I need freedom. I need salvation. And I would suggest to you that when Jesus says to both Christian and non-Christian, I am standing at the door and I am knocking, this is transformative if you can receive it. Everything is burning around us in some form or another. And listen, I use the analogy sometimes of plates spinning in our lives. By a show of hands, how many of you feel like you've got a lot of plates spinning in your life right now? Some of you are too weak to raise your hand. It's so hot. You're just like, I can't do it, but I believe it. I can't. It's true. That's the plate I'm spinning right now. I'm melting. This is not providing shade, just so you guys know. We're all melting. We got so many different things happening in our lives. So many fires we're constantly trying to just put them out. Okay, now I got to deal with this. Now I got to deal with this. Now I got to deal with this. But what if when Jesus says, I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking, and if you'll let me in, I'll come and dine with you. He's not just saying, let me come in and just hang out. We could talk and have a meal. What if he's really saying, I will come in and quench the longing of your soul, and I will fill you with so much wholeness that you will be completely and totally satisfied in life. And is that a one-time deal? I don't believe that. I think I used to think that sometimes, and naively. Hey, you just got to pray a prayer one time and life's good. How many of you have prayed a prayer one time and life still ain't that good? Don't raise your hand. We all know it's true. I already know the answer. It's not the way it works. Christianity is not some ticket into heaven. You don't claim a ticket. You don't go claim something. It's not like if you won a prize and you go claim it. You don't claim this. We receive the mercies and grace of God because our homes are on fire. And the good news is he's knocking and he's saying, I want to come in right now and I want to quench what is burning. I want to bring wholeness. I want to bring true happiness. I want to bring peace and I want to bring life into your situation. And so, friends, my encouragement is this, and I'm going to invite the worship team to come up. Told you I was going to go shorter. They're caught off guard. Take your time. But I did it on purpose. I want to give a moment for you to just consider that it's not meant when Jesus says, I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking. He's not just talking to a belligerent Christian who's like, I don't need God. I think he's talking to all of us who have different parts of our lives that are on fire. That he's saying, if you will let me come in, I can quench that. And I can meet you in ways you could never, ever imagine. And my hope and my prayer is I think that today we wanted to get to just change things up. By the way, as soon as we finish the service, this is a little commercial, as soon as we finish the service, those of you that have kids, please go get your kids. Don't leave them in there because they need to get picked up. But after that, I'm going to invite whoever wants to. We're going to walk around this way and we're going to go into the sanctuary. You get to see what's going on in there. We are T-minus 2 months. And 2.5 months, 3 months. We are T-minus 3 months, okay? I'm trying to be more optimistic, but we're so close. And then we thought, is that why we're celebrating that we're so close? No, that's not celebratory. But really what it was is this. God's doing something. God's doing something in all of our lives, and we want to celebrate that together as a church. That we would let God into this season, this moment. For some of you, maybe you kind of feel like you're on the outside. Maybe you feel like you're kind of on the outside. I would love to get to say, like we got a whole bunch of us here today. Maybe this, like you've been here a long time and you feel like you're being pushed out. Please come back in. We need you so much. You're so loved and we need you. If you're new here, you're like, I'm not meeting anybody. I'm having a hard time. Please don't leave. Please don't give up. Give us an opportunity to love you, to welcome you, to make you feel. This is the most loving group of people I've met. Most of them. No, I'm just kidding. These are great people. And I think we need to so what I'd love to say is after we're finished right here, I should have taught on incense because we've got carne asada and adobada afterwards, but I do want to encourage you to get your kids. Those of you that would like to see the inside, we're going to walk into the sanctuary. Those of you that don't care, no worries. You'll get to see it in a few months. T-minus 4 months. No, I'm just kidding. It really is 2.5 months, 2.5. But I want to encourage you on this one final thought, and it's this. Today, as we close in worship, as Jimmy leads us, as we celebrate, as we rejoice, I want you to do something that might be foreign only because we've always heard this as some kind of if you're not a Christian, let Jesus into your life. I want to say whether you are or not, whatever situation you're at in your relationship with God, I want you to, as we begin in worship, I want you to take a moment and say, Lord, I'm inviting you in again. I want to invite you in again. I want you to be deep in my life in a deeper way, greater way. There's areas that are on fire. Welcome him into those areas. Don't be vague. Don't be general. I love that they said that. The band said that. Too much of grace is general, and I agree. Get specific, be real, be honest. As deep as you'll go, you'll meet a deep God. As shallow as you stay, that's all you'll ever get. And that's not a challenge, that's a celebratory statement that if you are willing to go deeper, He'll already meet you there because He's already there. He's a loving and He's a deep God.
Thank you so much for joining us, whether online or in person. We pray that the ministry of Calvary San Diego is encouraging you in your faith. If you would like to follow along with what we are doing or hear more teachings, you can do so by downloading the Calvary SD mobile or TV app. Also, if you would like to partner with us and worship through giving, you can do so at calvarysd.com/give. Thanks for tuning in.